And welcome back to Music Free Static. I hope you're having a fabulous day. I want to talk about comedies, like movies and stuff. Now, I usually go into these podcast episodes, right? I'll have this whole outline written out. I could not figure out how I was going to talk about this today as I was going through last night, watching, in fact, comedies. In this case, I was watching the old Monty Python's Flying Circus, right? Which is great. But I was really hard to sit down and figure out, how do I want to talk about this? Now, the reason I want to is it's been on my mind with the news that they were making, they were trying to make Spaceballs 2 happen, okay? Mel Brooks is all on board. I forgot who it was who's actually pushing forward with it. Who's real Josh Gad, maybe, who's really driving the production for Spaceballs 2. As I've recorded this, Liam Neeson's new movie, Naked Gun, just came out. This is a sequel reboot-ish of the Naked Gun series, which starred a bunch of people whose names I've now forgotten. Leslie Nielsen. That's the one. Back in 80s and 90s, right? There used to be a lot of those types of movies that would come out. Now, I'm not into some of the really raunchy type ones, like, I had some of these in mind. This is why I write things down, so I don't have to remember them while I'm speaking. But there were some really, crazy ones that came out during the 80s that got said raunchy and dirty and all that stuff. I wasn't totally into those. But Spaceballs I loved. Robin Hood Men in Tights was amazing. The Naked Gun movies, again, went a little bit far from me, but they were, especially the first one, was really fun. And then you had movies like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and even, maybe if you want to slide down even to sort of the rom-coms that came out, things like What Women Want or Sleepless in Seattle, which is somewhat less comedy, but still falls into the rom-com, still fun movies. And you're not seeing a huge number of those types of things released now, right? In this modern movie culture, you're just not seeing a bunch of those things. And there are a number of reasons why. And I'm sure someone who's really deep into the film industry could tell you why. A lot of it's money, okay? Movies are not making what they used to. Okay, you get a rare one like Superman, I think, might hit the $1 billion mark, but even Superman is struggling to get there. I'm trying to remember. Someone, you may have to correct me in the comments. I think Lilo and Stitch actually managed to get right up close to that, which is awesome for Disney. Good for them. I haven't seen the live action Lilo and Stitch, which is said was doing gangbusters, but it was, I don't know. It did great. Then I suppose that counts as a comedy too. Kids' movies tend to be, right? Because kids like things that are fun. Turns out so do adults. Adults like things that are fun too. But it costs a lot of money to make a movie, and are you going to make that money back in the theaters? And recently, pretty much since COVID, the answer has been maybe, right? Because here's the thing. Movies were rocking before COVID, right? Marvel was really in their stride. Nearly everything they put out was pushing $1 billion. They were kicking, and they were doing really well. And there were a lot of movies that were sort of riding their coattails. It was cool to go to the movies. COVID hit, of course, and then everything shut down. So for 2 years, a year, I don't know, that old time is just funky. People stopped going to movies. Now, I stopped going not because of COVID, but because of the other people in the theater. The movie experience for me has not been a good one of late. I mean, I went and saw Spider-Man. It was the second one, third one. Yeah, with Doctor Strange, right? Well, No Way Home, maybe. Yeah. Anyway, went to see that one, and it was a horrible experience. The movie, as it was presented, was fine. There were no technical glitches or anything like that. The movie theater did a perfectly fine job of showing the movie. Sound was great, all of that. But anytime any character showed up that they recognized from one of the previous movies, because of course that's what Spider-Man did, or said an iconic line or something like that, the crowd cheered like it was the greatest thing ever. And it was just so annoying. It's like, yeah, great, it is Green Goblin. Can we just watch this? Yes, he said the line. Woohoo. Can we move on? It was so bad, and I have not wanted to go back and have that experience again. I liked the movie. The movie was fine, but I just I just didn't like it. Now, comedies on the other hand, there is some advantage to seeing a comedy with a group. Okay, it's one of the reasons why seeing a stand-up comic in person tends to be a better experience than just watching them at their special at home, because laughter is contagious, right? And that's the thing that makes seeing a comedy in the theater fun. Is I don't need to hear people cheering at every random comment, but when the joke lands and everyone in the theater starts laughing, it's easy to get pulled in and really feel that fun, right? Which is great, but they have to show the movies in the theaters for that to happen, right? And they put out a fun PSA, quote unquote PSA. It was an ad, but they framed it like a public service announcement. That was Liam Neeson talking about the death of comedy in theaters, and it was very, it was very much in the lines of any of those sorts of PSAs, talking about, oh, this animal is going extinct, or they may make more Pauly Shore movies or something. I don't know. But speaking of comedies, it's like comedy in Hollywood is dying, and we need your support to keep comedies going. And it was all an ad to go see Naked Gun, but the thrust of the message wasn't wrong either. They're not making comedies like they used to, because they just don't make the money. I don't know quite why. If it's people just, I can't speak for people. Okay, I can't. I can speak for me. Aside from the movie theater experience, which has been lousy, there is no particular reason for me to see a comedy in the theater. All right, now let me give that a little bit of background here. If I go, like, I went and saw all of the Lord of the Rings movies in the theater, okay? I didn't see The Hobbit, unfortunately, but I saw all of the Lord of the Rings trilogy in the theater. And it was amazing because you had these huge vistas and these amazing set pieces, watching the Rohirrim charge across the fields of the Pelennor to help rescue Gondor, right? On the theater with that sound, it was amazing, right? It was just, it's rocked. What do you get from a comedy, right? There's no reason to sit there and see Liam Neeson 80 feet tall or whatever on those screens, right? You don't benefit from it as a viewer, right? You don't really benefit from that. What you get is, the laughter from the rest of the audience. But as far as the theater experience goes, there really isn't a reason. So wait for it to hit streaming, Sure. And that's the problem with comedies, rom-coms and stuff too, though a few of those have been coming out. And I think you see it with the types of movies that are coming out lately. You've got your big blockbusters, Superman, Fantastic Four, right? All the Marvel movies, Star Wars, whenever they feel like actually making movies again. Um, I'm so excited for the Mandalorian and Grogu. I will not be seeing it in theaters because of, I haven't liked the movie theater experience, right? But anyway, you're getting those. You're also getting a bunch of horror movies, right? These movies that they're making for really cheap and relatively cheap, I suppose. And they don't have to worry about making quite as much at the box office. Well, theoretically, comedies could fall into that same I don't know, thing, right? They don't have to cost a lot to make, so they don't have to make as much. But they don't I don't know. I don't know if it's the audience draw not there. I don't know what. There's something that's not there. There's something missing. At least with a horror movie, yeah. There are reasons again to see it in a theater, right? Because yes, if you can't see all of that blood and gore and jump scare in a giant screen with sound coming at you from everywhere, what's the point, right? No, but at least it enhances the horror experience, right? But for comedies, dramas, right? I mean, how many of the Oscar bait movies that came out last year actually spent time in the theaters beyond what they had to be qualified to go to the Oscars? And I don't know that it was that many. Heck, half the time I've never even heard of most of the Oscar bait movies, right? Those movies that are up for Best Picture, most of the time I just, oh, that movie existed? What? When? How? It's like, it's out for a week, nobody hears about it, and it's gone. But it wins Best Picture. Okay, great. Maybe what I end up hearing about is some controversy about it or something, right? Uh, some of them have deserved controversy and some of them not so much, but still, nothing. But the comedies, right? If you've wanted to go see a comedy, there have been maybe one or two over the last few years. One or two per year, that is. And there may be more, and I'm just missing them. Admittedly, I'm not as plugged into the movie scene as I potentially could be. But the movies that are would fall into that genre have all been kids movies, right? It's been Lilo and Stitch and Moana and right all of the Disney movies, right? But also all of your animated ones as well, right? Yes, Lilo and Stitch was live action. I think, did the live action Moana actually come out? Did that come and go? I don't remember. And I forgot there were a couple of other animated movies that dropped this year and just kicked butt. And that's awesome. Honestly, it's great. And there's a special skill. Disney had it for a long time. Pixar used to be the master of it, and I think they've gone from making awesome stories to making preachy life lesson stories, and that they haven't been nearly as good. I certainly have not enjoyed the last few Pixar movies I've watched. I can't even remember the last Pixar movie I watched. But they haven't been the draw. But those movies that the whole family can watch and enjoy, and yeah, the kids are there. They're loving it because a lot of it's targeted towards them. But that's one of the things like Pixar was amazing at, was movies that spoke to the adults as well. So take The Incredibles, for example. The Incredibles, it's a superhero movie, right? Here it is, a retired, forced into retirement superhero, Mr. Incredible. He's having a little bit of a midlife crisis. He's got young children. His wife, who's also a superhero, is doing the stay-at-home mom thing while he is working in an insurance agency. And he's hating it because he liked being the hero. Okay, which is fine, but government says thou shalt not be a superhero anymore, so he's not. But as you go through, yeah, there's lots of wacky fun with all of the superhero-ness that comes with The Incredibles. But the main lesson, the character with growth, Bob, right, Mr. Incredible, is a very adult lesson that he's learning of, hey, you can move on. Your family is your greatest adventure. These were lessons that as an adult, as a father, and now as being a somewhat more middle-aged adult and father, this spoke to me in a very adult sort of way. That's what makes that movie so awesome for me. Well, that's great, but it's also just a fun movie, right? You're seeing Frozone, okay, here comes the giant robot marching through the cities. It's like, oh, great, I need to hero up. And he opens his secret thing to get his suit, and it's gone. And he's just, where's my super suit? And it was just, it's just fun, right? I'm talking about movies the other day, a few weeks ago, maybe, talking about, the movies don't have to be good, they just have to be fun sometimes for them to become classics or just to do well, right? There's this whole, I don't know, there's this whole set of people who are into movies, critics perhaps, the people who vote on Oscars, those type of things, who, for a movie to be good, it has to be like deep, relevant, socially relevant stories and all, that you almost have to slog through to finish. But what movies that people like are fun, right? And comedies, right, by their very nature, are supposed to be fun. Not all of them have been, okay, to be fair, but I love a good comedy, especially one that's smart in some way, okay, which in some ways seems silly. But let's take Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, for example. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is about two very stupid guys, okay? Bill S. Preston, Esquire, and Ted Theodore Logan, right? They're trying to form their band, Wild Stallions, and it's not going well mostly because they don't know how to play their instruments, It's their typical, we would love to be in a metal band like Van Halen, but they're not putting in the work to do it. And they're failing they're failing their classes, right? And this isn't great, but they get, apparently, right, here's the story. In the future, Wild Stallions music saves the world, okay? And Rufus, played by George Carlin, has this whole spiel about all of the stuff that the music did for humanity, okay? And it's great, but Bill and Ted have to stay together to form the band and do the thing. Great. So, he gives them a time machine and says, good luck on your history exam. So they decide to go back in time and collect great figures from history to speak at an oral report that they're doing to save their grade. Okay, it's like their final exam. If they can ace their final oral report, they will have just enough points to squeak by and pass their class. Okay, great. And so they go on a most excellent adventure through history. And, they meet Socrates and Billy the Kid, and all of this is kind of framed by the fact that these guys are idiots, right? But the jokes they tell through the story they're not the they're not the obvious like raunchy type jokes like you would get out of The Naked Gun, right? And they show one of them in the trailers in The Naked Gun of here's thermal imaging of Drebin's apartment, Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson, who he's trying to solve her case, and they're watching it through, heat night sensitive predator vision, right? And it looks like she is performing a sex act on him, and then you go in and know she's cleaning the oven, okay? But right, very much a raunchy type of over sexualized humor, okay? Not entirely my jam. I have a dirty sense of humor sometimes. Often these movies go too far. But Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure never goes there. Yes, Bill has a thing for his stepmother because she's 2 years older than him. She was a senior, or 3 years. She was a senior while they were freshmen and has married his dad, and she is hot. Okay, she's a very beautiful woman, and, right? So they make some jokes about that, but it never gets, like, overly crazy, right? It gets to, Ted's like, it's your mom, dude. It's like, okay, But there's a great scene. I missed it for a long time. You have Billy the Kid, Socrates, and Sigmund Freud, and all of them actually, at the mall in San Dimas. With the idea is Bill and Ted drop them off at the mall to check out what modern life is, and they had to go find Napoleon Bonaparte, who Ted's brother just sort of ditched in the middle of the city. Okay, great. Well, here you've got Billy the Kid and Socrates, who have become fast friends despite not speaking each other's language. And there are these two cute young women who are like all, sort of googly-eyed over these two guys. And so they go to talk to him, and, it's, I'm Billy the Kid. And I'm from history. And he shows his wanted poster or something like that. Socrates, and they get a chance to explain or to exchange like two sentences, and here comes Sigmund Freud. And Freud, through the entire conversation, is holding a corn dog. Now, the reason this is fun, now obviously, and Freud just kills everything, But part of the joke here is that Sigmund Freud is part of all of his philosophy on psychology and stuff. Well, like everything goes back to some form of, I don't know, some form of thing about sex in some way or other. Okay, I'm not well schooled in psychology. Okay, I haven't studied Freud or anything like that, right? But that was one of those things that came up a lot as part of that. So here he is holding up a corn dog that it looks like, you could interpret it, I suppose, again, with the whole Freudian thing, as being an erect penis. Okay. Because it's Freud, and because of this, right? It's a very, very subtle joke. But if you, like, oh, yeah, and they never call it out. They never say, why, that's a mighty erect corn dog you have there, Freud. No, it's just, he's just there holding this thing up. Subtle, fun, right? And yeah, there's all sorts of silliness of, here's Genghis Khan in a sporting goods shop, and he's looking at baseball bats and stuff like, weapons, I have found the armory, right? Because that's what Genghis Khan is, right? He's this great warrior, right? And they talk about it at the end of the, they're giving the presentation, here's Genghis Khan, who totally ravaged China, and who we're told 2 hours ago totally ravaged Oshman Sporting Goods, right? The whole movie is making jokes that have some intelligence behind them. Okay, they're not just the dumb, goofy um, uh, stuff, right? Now, to counter that a little bit, a movie I really like is Robin Hood Men in Tights. Okay, great comedy. It tends to go a little bit far into the sexualized humor. Okay, not so much that it really bugs me, but enough that I don't watch it very often. I mean, I love the movie in general. There's lots of fun stuff. Carrie Elways is great in it. Um, but a lot of the jokes in the movie are about the fact you've got Maid Marian in a chastity belt, and the Robin finding the key to his eternal happiness, which in theory is the key to unlock her chastity belt. Okay, yeah. So there's a number of those types of things. Okay, um, but there's still a lot of fun throughout this movie. Of hey, it's um, you know, playing and I don't know, taking a couple of shots at other Robin Hood movies and things like that. The idea that, what, there's Prince John and the Sheriff of Rottingham, because as Robin Hood comes in and it's like, well, what makes you think you can defeat us? Because unlike other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent. It's like, yeah, fun. And if you've seen Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, or any of the Errol Flynn's, Robin Hood, it's like, yeah, but especially Prince of Thieves, where you've got Kevin Costner, who's still has his whatever Southern thing he's got going on, which, let's be fair, the basic Southern accent, I think if I'm remembering correctly, that closer to the Carolinas might have actually been closer to what the English accent was than what is the current modern English accent. Okay. I could be wrong about that to some extent. I found it fascinating as I went through a period in my life where I was really interested in dialects. It wasn't a long period in my life, but it was I found it fascinating to see how dialects change and why some places have the dialects they do, in part because of the mixing of other dialects, right? But if you get a group in isolation, you don't get that mixing, right? So in the American West in particular, you have the Western movement of peoples. And so you get people from all over the place. You've got people from all over Europe. You've got people from Asia and Africa to some extent, and less so for fairly horrific reasons. But you get this huge mixing of cultures and languages and things like that, and so it shapes how your dialects happen. Well, the American South was, again, founded by English, but didn't have quite as much of that mixing for a long time. So anyway, it's fascinating, and I digress completely. But the joke in Robin Hood Men in Tights is funny on 2 or 3 or 4 levels, and it's great. And of course, I love the puns. Now, I've heard a couple of stand-up comics. Ken Knapsack made it a big thing of his when talking about comedy, just as he was going through on episodes of Force Center. And I haven't listened to Force Center for a while, so I don't know if he's still on it, but he is strongly of the opinion that puns aren't comedy. I disagree, but in that I think he calls puns are a party trick. So okay, I think puns are hilarious, but I kind of understand where he's going, and that comedy is about crafting a good joke, leading your audience in a story to a payoff that makes them laugh. You can get some quick, cheap laughs through a pun, and I love them. All right, and that's one thing. Spaceballs and Mel Brooks was just great at this stuff. But I don't know if you are old enough to remember Mel Brooks movies. I'm at of an age where I saw some of his later stuff. I didn't see a lot of his earlier things, but things like Young Frankenstein is a fabulous comedy that's sort of, I'm not going to call it a parody of monster movies, Frankenstein in particular, but it kind of is, right? If you haven't seen it, it's really worth watching. It stars Gene Wilder as young Frankenstein, and he pronounces it that way specifically to differentiate himself from his father, grandfather, something like great grandfather, whatever it is, who was in fact Victor Frankenstein, who created the monster. So, but he inherits the castle. So he goes to check out the castle. And again, Mel Brooks does tend to lean into some of the sexualized humor, but a lot of it not so much. And a lot of it, or what is there, is really subtle. And there's just a lot of fun stuff of, oh, here's like the pronunciation of the name. Ah, Mr. Frankenstein. No, it's Frankenstein. Ah, okay. And it's like, ah, so you must be Igor. No, it's pronounced Igor. Aha, I see I see what you're doing here. This is fun. And Igor was a hunchback. But the hump kept changing sides and moving around, and it's like, and it was just subtle. And in Robin Hood Men in Tights, he did the same thing. Prince John has a mole that is just random spots on his face in every scene. Sometimes just different camera angles. It'll be someplace wildly different. Okay. It's not just, oh, it was here and now it's just suddenly back a little bit. No, it's like it was on his cheek, and now it's on his forehead, and now it's on the other cheek, right? And they call it out once. It's like, wasn't your mole on the other side? It's like, I have a mole? Right. Okay. Maybe a little over the top. But again, fun, right? There's just this whole series of comedies that you're not seeing today. And I don't know, I don't know if it's just box office. I don't know if the sensitivities aren't or are perhaps there. Have we as a society become so overly sensitive perhaps that we can't laugh at stuff? That's very possible. One of the movies that it is really good is Blazing Saddles. Again, a Mel Brooks movie. I can't watch it often. So many of the jokes in there are so great. But the movie, which came out in the 70s, I think, I'd have to go back and look. It stars Gene Wilder and Dom DeLuise, and of course Mel Brooks stars in most of his, and a bunch of amazing actors. But the premise of the movie is laughing at racism. It is 100% making fun of racism. But it does it through racist humor. And it casts the villains, they're racist in general, but and so you get some of that, but you also get, here's the town. They're all, I guess the story is, let me give you a little overview. It's a Western. And the idea is that here's a town. You've got the rich bad guy who's trying to buy up the town or something along those lines. And they need a sheriff to help protect the town. Well, the only one willing to take the job is this black guy. And with modern sensibilities, oh, he's black. Cool. Who cares? But that's the whole point, is nobody wants him as sheriff because he's black. And they've got the racist town type thing. It's like, a black sheriff? We can't do that. And they play off that joke a little bit in Robin Hood Men in Tights as well. But because Mel Brooks loves to call back to his own movies, and it's fun. But there's a lot of racist humor in the movie because that's exactly the point. That's what Mel Brooks was trying to do, is show that this is just stupid. But I can't deal with that, right? I just get really tired of They drop the N word so many times in that movie. I just can't handle it. Okay. Great movie. A lot of fun. Comedy's great. And as a sort of, I'm not going to say it's a parody of Westerns, but it kind of is. It's fabulous. But there's only so many times I can hear somebody drop an N-word before I just give up on it, right? so, so yeah, but that's a movie that if you were trying to make that movie today, right? And it's sort of a cult classic. People love this thing. But if you try to put this out today, brand new movie, man, you'd get stoned. you know? So maybe that's part of it. And admittedly, yes, our society has evolved somewhat where we're not making some of these jokes that really we probably shouldn't have been making. But there's a lot of comedy out there that doesn't involve racism, sexism, or any of that other stuff. It's actually possible to be funny, right? I love a good, clean comedy. And honestly, Spaceballs is one that falls into that. It does a really good job of avoiding most of the sexist humor. Okay. Yeah, they have a couple of jokes. Nothing that it's explicitly ist in any sort of way. It's just they do jump into let's say every once in a while they lean into some of the sexual humor, but hardly at all, honestly, in Spaceballs, which is great. Or when they do, it's not at somebody's expense, which I like. Okay, so yeah, I love a good comedy, and I've been watching. I went back and rewatched Wayne's World, which, speaking of movies that tend to lead into sexualized humor, but there's some great comedy in Wayne's World. Okay, now I never watched Saturday Night Live when that was a regular sketch, but I barely watched Saturday Night Live. I just was rarely up that late, and now it's just not funny. So, but there are some great scenes in Saturday Night Live in Wayne's World that are comedy gold. And so even though the movie isn't necessarily great overall, there's a reason why it was beloved. And there's a reason I like to go back, and I found it was on Tubi. You can watch it for free right now on Tubi TV. that you can just see that, yeah, there's some good stuff here. So, I like it. So, I just like a good comedy. And I just haven't seen a lot recently. And I'm hoping that they actually can make a comeback. But will they? I don't know. I hope so. But let me know. Do you have a favorite comedy? Something that you like that you like to go back to? A couple of them. Let me know. Drop a comment either here on YouTube or on Spotify and let me know. Or join the Movies and Books channel I've got in my Discord. And I love talking movies, so I'm happy to chat there. And until next time, be excellent to each other. And this is Music Free Static signing off.